Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
First UK-EU summit. It marks a new era in our relationship.
The white flag is fluttering over Downing Street tonight, while the 23rd of June 2016 is known as Independence Day. Today will be known as our National Day of Surrender. The government's New Deal is an affront to the largest democratic mandate in British history. Tonight, I'll be joined by a top team of Brexiteer titans, Andrew Griffith, Sir David Davis and Sir John Redwood, to pick through the government's betrayal of Brexit. From fishing to free movement to dynamic alignment, the great Brexit betrayal is finally here, and tonight we will reveal it in all its gory details. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most intellectual panel, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Sir John Redwood, and the former Labour MP, Lloyd Russell-Moyle. As ever, we're devoting the last part of the programme to it. Let me know your views. Mail Mogg at gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you. The top stories. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, has hailed a real chance to turn the page as the government signed a post-Brexit deal with the bloc, which the Prime Minister described as a win-win. The government claimed the reset will cut red tape for travellers and businesses, boosting the economy by £9 billion by 2040. Hailing it as good for jobs, good for bills and good for our borders, Sir Keir Starmer says it delivers on his mission to back British workers and put more money in people's pockets. But the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, says the deal is taking the UK back to the past. The deal will allow French fishing boats access to British waters for 12 years, no return to the single market or freedom of movement, and holidaymakers will be able to use electronic passport gates when travelling in and out of EU member countries. Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel says Labour has betrayed Brexit and Britain. Speaking this afternoon, though, the Prime Minister heralded a new era for UK and EU relations.
Britain is back on the world stage, working with our partners, doing deals that will grow our economy and putting more money in the pockets of working people. The decisions that we've taken to stabilise the economy and lead the way internationally have made Britain a place where people want to do business once again.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson believes this is a Brexit betrayal.
Wouldn't go back on Brexit, on the freedoms that the British people won in that referendum. He's done the absolute reverse. He's decided to make this country a rule taker. We're going to be taking rules from Brussels under the control of the European Court of Justice, with no ability for our Parliament, our government, to vary those rules.
Elsewhere, Donald Trump says Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire following his call with Vladimir Putin. The pair discussed the ongoing war in Ukraine, with President Putin reportedly saying Russia and Ukraine must find compromises that suit both sides. Ukrainian and Russian delegations failed to reach any deal during face-to-face talks in Istanbul on Friday. Writing on Truth Social, President Trump said, "I believe it went very well. Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war." The US president is due to speak in the White House shortly. Elsewhere, a 17-year-old boy has been charged in connection with the death of a 16-year-old who died after a targeted attack on a Scottish beach. Police were called to reports of a 16-year-old Caden Moy being seriously injured at Irvine Beach in North Ayrshire on Saturday evening. The teenager of East Kilbride in South Lanarkshire was taken to hospital but died on Sunday morning. The 17-year-old boy was arrested later, charged, and is due to appear in court tomorrow. The force said inquiries are ongoing. And King Charles and Queen Camilla beamed as they arrived for the opening day of the Chelsea Flower Show this evening. It's one of the most star-studded events of the year, with celebrities donning their best frocks for the annual garden showcase held in the scenic grounds of London's Royal Hospital, Chelsea. Their Majesties even bumped into former Manchester United, Real Madrid and England star David Beckham, who attended the event in London for the first time in his role as the ambassador to the King's Foundation, which is celebrating its 35th anniversary this year. And those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Today, the white flag of surrender is fluttering over Downing Street. The Labour government has betrayed the 17 million who voted to leave the European Union in 2016. The Brexit vote was a once-in-a-generation political revolution. It represented a rejection of the moribund idea of a European superstate in favour of the nation-state. It was a rejection of mass migration in favour of controlled borders. It was a vote for economic prosperity instead of over-regulation and bureaucracy. Perhaps, most importantly, it was about reasserting British sovereignty over Brussels. On almost every one of these principles, Sir Keir Starmer has managed to betray the British people. British fishermen have been betrayed. EU fisheries now have access to our waters for a further 12 years, when we were to give access back to British fishermen next year. Our industries have also been abandoned by our capitulation on the European Union's net zero policies. The surrender deal aligns our carbon budgets with the EU's. This will continue to weaken whatever is left of our steel industry, just as the United States is moving away from this nonsense. The agreement also refers coyly to irregular migration, giving a revealing insight into what the government thinks about illegal migrants. It's no wonder Labour decriminalised illegal migration. It just doesn't think such a thing exists. The agreement hints at a youth experience scheme, which is code for a youth mobility scheme. Many have tried to claim that such a scheme is not one that was being pursued in the specific negotiations, does not amount to free movement. But this is simply not true. While we were members of the European Union, 65% of free movement was people aged 18 to 30. Fundamentally, we have become rule takers rather than rule setters. The European Court of Justice will once again have jurisdiction over the United Kingdom. The Reverend Starmer has betrayed British sovereignty to the EU superstate. Perhaps the worst thing about this deal is that it puts any future government in a straitjacket, or at least tries to. If a future government wants to exploit domestic fossil fuels, it could breach this deal. If a future government wants to prioritise British fisheries over European ones, it could breach this deal too. This deal makes one thing clear. On day one, a future Conservative government must put this deal through the shredder. As ever, let me know your views. We're going to be discussing them with my panel in the last segment of this programme. Mail Mogg at gbnews.com. But now I'm delighted to be joined by the Shadow Business Secretary, Andrew Griffith. Andrew, thank you for coming in. What would the Conservatives do if they were in government about this deal?
Well, let's be clear. We would never have done anything even remotely like this deal. This is a terrible deal. It's a surrender summit. It's a betrayal of Brexit, both in substance and in form. It puts the EU tomorrow, after this deal, in more control over our rules. It goes back to us being a rule taker with the arbiter being the European Court of Justice. We have less control of our borders because from Boulogne to Bucharest, millions of young people could potentially seek to take advantage of a scheme, the details of which we have yet to see, but you would be foolish to trust this Prime Minister. And from a business perspective, ephemeral benefits that may or may not appear by 2040 but are dwarfed by damaging things like the Employment Rights Bill, making it easier for the European Union to export their goods to compete with British jobs and British farmers, for example. So, to be clear, what we would do, if this deal stands, and I fear it will, but it's a bad deal, and Parliament should use its voice clearly to call it a bad deal, we will repeal this bill. We will put it through the shredder. You know, it's going to be a busy first day of the next Conservative government. You know, there will be taxes that have been punitive we will have to repeal. We will have to take back control of our courts and legal system. But on this busy day, we will be repealing the deal that this Prime Minister has done.
OK, so the Labour Party says, in terms of fishing, that we'd given this access to fishing waters and they're just continuing it. It's a reasonable thing to do, that our fishing communities aren't big enough to catch all the fish that are there. Isn't that a perfectly reasonable argument?
No, there's a world of difference, Jacob, and I think your viewers will understand this, between, in the midst of Brexit, a 5-year deal to provide a transition period to allow everybody to adjust and things to settle down, with the promise that we would move to an annual deal, the same sort of relationship that the Faroese have with the European Union, an annual negotiation, to the Prime Minister coming in and signing away 12 years. I mean, the outrage of that is, as far as I can see, there's no prospect of the Prime Minister being in office for 12 years. At this rate, he'll be lucky to stay in office for 12 months. So the idea he's going to try and bind this country and sell our fishing rights for 12 years, which I think is way beyond anyone's contemplation. And for what? I mean, the whole big question that we've all been sitting here today, scratching our heads, trying to work out is which particular one of these things is actually the benefit for the United Kingdom? Is it opening our country to more European imports? Is it giving them more power over our lives? Is it damaging our industry that competes with Europe through tying them into European energy, higher expensive energy costs? Or is it just paying them for the privilege of telling us how we can run our lives?
Well, we will be able to export some foodstuffs to Europe more easily. Isn't that a benefit that farmers in your constituency might welcome?
There are a million ways of doing that. So, look, of course, I mean, I believe in free trade, Jacob. It enriches us all, and it's lifted billions of people out of poverty, and it's indeed fundamental to the United Kingdom economy. So to argue against this deal is not to argue against the benefits of free trade or of removing friction in general. If that is the objective, there are a myriad of ways that we could do that. We could have digital borders, we could have trusted trader schemes, we could have mutual recognition as free and competing states without having to invite Brussels in to decide our rules and European courts to arbitrate over them once again.
And will we actually potentially have Brussels inspectors coming in to check that we're meeting their rules?
Well, ultimately, the buck stops with the European Court of Justice and Brussels. So we are very, very clear. I mean, every one of the Conservative Party's red lines were broken today, but we are a rule taker in some very specific and important domains.
And this is worse than the deal New Zealand has, where New Zealand is trusted to provide goods to the European Union, and we're not.
Correct. And in almost every aspect of this, you can find an example where a country has been able bilaterally to negotiate exactly the same outcome without having to pay in and without having to be a rules taker. So the government's talked quite a lot today about e-gates. And that was another, sort of punishment-beating friction that was imposed on the UK after Brexit. It wasn't to do with Brexit itself. It was a consequence of the Commission and certain member states' beliefs. But there are many countries that have access to e-gates. Indeed, some countries already allow access for British people to e-gates. So the Prime Minister is falsely claiming that to be a benefit of the deal. There's nothing to have stopped us reaching a mutual agreement on that or many other issues.
But the deal doesn't even give access to e-gates. It has to be agreed by the member states anyway, because it's their
competence.
Authority.
It's their competence now, and it will be their competence.
It's dishonest for the government to have said the e-gates is a benefit. Youth movement. We've given youth movement to Australia and various other countries. Isn't it only fair to give it to our European friends? They're our near neighbours, and, British people may want to go to the continent.
Well, look, fair is a big word. There's also fairness for British students who are working hard to get a place into university that will otherwise be competed or contended. There are young British graduates whose earnings premium, despite having had to pay more for their education, is at a lower level than it's ever been, partly, again, because they're competing with foreign workers. And there's the challenges of housing. We're sitting here broadcasting from London, one of the one of the least dense urban centres, but where there's an acute housing shortage. And where do we think that the potentially millions, it may be capped, but it may potentially not be, and we've seen before promises about capped immigration numbers. And with the Home Office inability to seemingly count, that's a promise that one would take very cautiously. So potentially millions of young people from Boulogne to Bucharest. This is not all people popping over the channel from France. This is from the large encompass of the whole of Europe coming here competing. So no one is against mutual visa schemes. But that has not been the history of free movement, and that's an important red line that, again, we don't trust the government not to have crossed.
I think we can have a clip from Keir Starmer that we can look at and then perhaps discuss a bit further. Yes, let's do that.
This is the first UK-EU summit. It marks a new era in our relationship. And this deal is a win-win. It delivers what the British public voted for last year. It gives us unprecedented access to the EU market, the best of any country outside of the EU or EFTA, all while sticking to the red lines in our manifesto about not rejoining the single market, the customs union, and no return to freedom of movement.
So what Keir Starmer was saying seems good enough, doesn't it? It's a summit with the EU. It's all very good that we should be friendly with our near neighbours. And these advantages are going to flow from it, and we can do it again in future. And it's what people voted for last year. They voted for a reset. He did at least say that in his manifesto.
Well, look, the Prime Minister, it's turned out today, and I think we knew this before from his deal with Chagos and his tiny tariff deal with the United States, is a terrible negotiator. The outcome of this EU surrender summit, God help us all. He said it's only the first. I mean, if we're going to have a repetition, of this, there's going to be very little of our sovereignty left as it gets salami sliced.
Didn't it warm the cockles of your heart to see our great leader warmly embracing the leader of the European Union when he and van der Leyen kissed each other? Isn't that a wonderful sight?
I'm sure he was very warmly embraced by our friends in the European Union. And this is not about malice about Europe, but this is about the betrayal of Brexit, you know, an unprecedented
I'm going to ask you one thing we're going to have to throw off to some breaking news. But what I want to ask is, would the Conservatives really break international law to scrap these agreements?
Yes, this is a bad deal. No ifs, no buts. This is a bad deal. We would not have done this deal, and when we get back into power, we must repudiate this deal.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I think we've been trumped and must go over to Tatiana Sanchez.
Yes, indeed, Jacob. Thank you very much. Let's cross straight to the White House now, where President Trump is giving his remarks on his latest phone call today with the Russian president.
Consensual, intimate imagery of I and CII. Artificial intelligence and social media are the digital candy for the next generation. Sweet, addictive, and engineered to have an impact on the cognitive development of our children. But unlike sugar, these new technologies can be weaponized, shaped beliefs, and sadly affect emotions and even be deadly. Over the past few months, I have met with brave survivors, deeply loving families, and caring advocates who know firsthand the emotional and psychological toll of NCII and deepfake abuse. Alison Berry stood boldly for change, despite the risk posed to her and her family by speaking out and making her voice heard. Alison, your voice and the voices of so many like you made this bill a national priority. Many thanks to members of Congress, both parties, for passing this legislation, including Speaker Johnson, Senator Cruz, Senator Klobuchar, Congresswoman Salazar, Congresswoman Dean, and Congressman Guthrie, and so many more. Thank you all for coming together to prioritize people over politics. As First Lady, my Be Best initiative is focused on improving children's well-being, encouraging kindness, and creating a safer online environment for our youth. Today, I'm proud to say that the values of Be Best will be reflected in the law of the land. I want to thank my husband, President Trump, for standing with us on this effort. His signature on this new law is now is not where our work ends on this issue. Now we look to the Federal Trade Commission and the private sector to do their part. Today, through the Take It Down Act, we affirm that the well-being of our children is central to our future, of our families and America. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the President. Thank you.
Want to sit down?
Yeah.
Send the gentleman. Nobody knew that. Great job. That was a great job. Well, I want to thank everybody. We just spent 2.5 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and I think some progress has been made. It's a terrible situation going on over there. 5,000 young people every single week are being killed. So hopefully we did something. We also spoke to the heads of most of the European nations, and we're trying to get that whole thing wrapped up. What a shame that it ever started in the first place. So, but I want to thank Melania and for your leadership in this very important issue. It's an amazing issue. America is blessed to have such a dedicated and compassionate First Lady. I would tell you she is very dedicated. In fact, if you look at just what I heard, Putin just said they respect your wife a lot. I said, what about me? No, they like Melania better. That wasn't good. I don't know if that was good. I'm okay with it. I'm okay. I also want to congratulate the First Lady in securing $25 million in the first fiscal year, 2026, budget to provide housing and support for youth transitioning out of the foster care. And I can say that she loves children, and you really worked very hard on this, and you had a lot of help from some friends of mine right here, and a lot of the senators are here and congressmen, and I appreciate you all being here. We're also grateful to be joined by people that are just in love with what we're doing. It's such an important situation, and commissioners of the Federal Trade Commission and the CEO of X, Linda Yaccarino. Where are you, Linda? Where are you, Linda? Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Stand up. Thank you, Linda. Great job. You're doing a great job. It's a big deal, right? That's great. Today, it's my honor to officially sign the Take It Down Act into law. It's a big thing, very important, so horrible what takes place. This will be the first ever federal law to combat the distribution of explicit, imaginary, posted without subject's consent. They take horrible pictures, and I guess sometimes even make up the pictures, and they post it without consent or anything else. And very importantly, this includes for forgeries generated by artificial intelligence known as deepfakes. We've all heard about deepfakes. I have them all the time, but nobody does anything. I asked Pam, can you help me, Pam? She says, no, I'm too busy doing other things. Don't worry, you'll survive. But a lot of people don't survive. That's true, and so horrible. With the rise of AI image generation, countless women have been harassed with deepfakes and other explicit images distributed against their will. This is the wrong, and it's just so horribly wrong. And it's a very abusive situation, like in some cases people have never seen before. And today we're making it totally illegal. Thank you. Upon hearing the stories of so many women affected, our First Lady made stopping these abuses a top priority, and she was given tremendous support because she'd go up to people and talk about it. They say, yeah, we know about it. We have the problem. Can we do something? And she did something about it with the help of a lot of the people, especially the political people sitting here today. Among Melania's guests in the gallery during my address to the joint session of Congress was a 15-year-old young person, Elliston Berry, whose image was turned into an illicit deepfake by a peer. Elliston, where are you? Are you around? Stand up, darling. That's fine. Beautiful. It's great. Thank you. It's fantastic. Elliston quickly became a powerful advocate committed to preventing other girls from suffering the same abuse. Elliston, we salute you and we thank you very much, and it's an honor to have you with us today. Great job you've done. Also with us are several other brave Americans whose lives were rocked by online harassment, including Francesca Manny, as well as a South Carolina State Representative, Brandon Guffey, and his family, who have lost their son to suicide after he was targeted in an internet extortion scam, of which you have a lot of them, a lot. I want to thank you both for your incredible work and to reach this important day. Could you stand up, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Great job. I've read about it. Thank you very much. It's a real honor to have you here, because there's no place like the White House, I found out. You know, you have a lot of places, and I just left some of the richest places, and we loved them, and they gave us a nice contribution of about $5 trillion, but this is a special place. Even they talk about it, so it's great to have everybody here. Under the law, I will sign in just a moment. Anyone who intentionally distributes explicit images without the subject's consent will face up to 3 years in prison. In addition, this law establishes new civil liabilities for online platforms that refuse to take these images down promptly upon request. We will not tolerate online sexual exploitation, and especially it's gone on at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's getting worse and worse, and I think this is going to hopefully stop it. And not easy to do. People talked about all sorts of First Amendment, Second Amendment. They talked about any amendment they could make up, and we got it through because of some very brave people, including some very brave politicians in the audience. I want to thank the bill's sponsors, Senator Ted Cruz. Ted, stand up, please. Great. Great. Thank you, Ted. It's great. Very effective person. And Congresswoman Maria Salazar, friend of mine. Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much for their amazing work. And thanks also to the 99 senators and 408 members of Congress who voted in favor of the bill. Wow, I wish we could get that vote. Some other things. We have another bill coming up. Do you think we'll get that vote? Maybe not. We should, but we probably won't. But working with our First Lady, we've shown that bipartisanship is still possible. That's true. With 99 senators, that's incredible. Senators, stand up. Look at that. John, you're here. Look at all of the senators. This is big stuff. I'm in trouble because I don't have your names. They didn't give me these names. We have so many. We have half of the Senate here. Now they're all going to hate me because I can't introduce you. Oh, we don't have the time for that. I have to get back to Putin and people. But thank you very much for being here, all of you, and congressmen, a lot of them, and women. Working with our First Lady, though, we've shown that bipartisanship is possible. I mean, it's the first time I've seen such a level of bipartisanship, and it's a beautiful thing to do. I'm not even sure you realize, honey, you know, a lot of the Democrats and Republicans don't get along so well. You've made them get along, and she didn't even know about that. She didn't know we had a problem. She didn't know we had a problem. She got it. But I want to thank you, honey. You've done amazing that this was done when you started. And I said, I don't know, it sounds like a tough one, and yet a very important one, and you got it done. So I congratulate you, and I congratulate Ted, Maria, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. And we'll sign the bill. Thank you. You're going to sign it, too? No, I'm not signing it. I see your name, Chuck Wesley. It's been around a long time, huh? Come on around. That's beautiful. Come on around.
We're just watching live pictures there of the US President Donald Trump signing a bill cracking down on deep fake porn. He also did touch on his telephone call with the Russian president earlier on, saying it went very well. Let's take you straight back, though, to State of the Nation.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, welcome back. It's always nice to have Donald Trump joining our programme. You've heard my view of today's Surrender Summit, and you've heard the view of the Shadow Cabinet, Minister Andrew Griffith, and now you'll be hearing from the former Brexit Secretary, David Davis. But we now want you to join the debate, and I've got my friends of the programme to join me too, the former Labour candidate Kevin Craig, as well as my panel, former Conservative Cabinet Minister Sir John Redwood and former Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle. And the mailbag's been coming in, which I'm going to include in this section rather than later because of Donald Trump cutting in. And lots of questions have come in Freddie says, and John, I'll put this to you, Starmer is not surrendering. There is zero way of fixing the Brexit mess. It's too late to surrender anything. The disaster that was created by the Tories, by you, that's me, and by Boris Johnson has not reached its full capacity yet. Both Scotland and Wales are probably going to break away from the UK and join the EU again. Is that a fair summary? That actually it's our fault and we should have done it better?
Of course not. I mean, that's complete nonsense. And what this government has managed to do is to give away the fish, give away the powers of self-government, give away the power to have our own energy policy to try and get energy prices down for nothing as yet. There is nothing nailed down in the text we saw today of the things we're meant to get. And the things he's trying to get, we should get anyway. I mean, they shouldn't be blocking our visitors wanting to spend their money on holiday in their countries. It's in their interest to let them through fairly quickly, and we shouldn't have to give any negotiating capital to tell them how to run a better holiday business. And it's in their interest that our defence companies sell them really good weapons.
And Kevin, isn't it absolutely extraordinary that we are actually going to pay the EU for the privilege of regulating us, and we're now going to have our rules on food, and worst of all, on energy, set by the EU? We have to have the toughest rules if the EUs are tougher than ours.
Well, Jacob, as well as a Labour background, I'm a businessman, and if you look at the range of British businesses that have come out today in support of what the government has done, M&S, Asda...
M&S is Lord Rose, who was a leading campaigner in the Brexit Remain camp, and he was the one who said...
You're straight on me there, Jacob. I haven't not even finished a sentence.
But it's really important to understand his background. He's the one who came in front of the Treasury Select Committee and said that free movement of people was cutting the wages of people in the UK. So I'm not sure he's a great authority.
Well, Jacob, but there are a load of British business today who say that this is a welcome delivery of a pledge. The government said we're not going to go back on Brexit. We respect... The government said we're not going to go back on Brexit. We're going to... Hang on. This is not going to be a great chat, right? OK. The government said we're not going to go back on Brexit. You know, we hear the British people, but we are going to improve the relationship with Europe. And today what you've heard is the start of that. And these are significant measures, whether it's on defence, whether it's on loosening things for British businesses. There are a large number of British companies who've come out today and said, well done, Keir Starmer. That's a fact.
Have you read the pages on defence that the EU's put out, the 13 pages of it?
I've read the government statement this side.
There's nothing specific on defence. It is general terms.
Direction of travel,
But we already have defence through NATO. We already have the joint defence operations
so I'm going to interrupt, so I'm going to interrupt
manufacturing.
You. British companies are going to be able, arms companies are going to be able to get more defence work as a result when this agreement's finalised.
But why? Because foreign countries buy good defence equipment anyway. We buy defence equipment from the EU. We have shared
They're our largest
interests.
export market. They're over the road, and that's why Freddie is a great wise man, that guy, because he's holding you and Sir John to account for what happened under Brexit, which is only a third of the country still want, and which hasn't worked for working class people.
But it has worked. We're paying less into the EU budget. We're saving billions of pounds every year. We're able to do AI, which Europe is quite incapable of doing because of its regulations. We're making agriculture more productive with gene editing, which should probably be banned under this agreement. And if we had any sense, we could break away from the terrible green agenda that is ruining our economy and making us cold and poor, and where the EU is going even further and faster than we are.
What does Lloyd think? Because I'm going
to bring him in a moment.
Come on, what does I mean? The thing is, it is how you're presenting this. Brexit has not worked for the people of this country. Okay, it hasn't. And the thing about the e-gates, which may happen in October, it may be next year. This matters. It's been harder to travel around Europe since Brexit. This starts to make it easier, but it respects the vote.
But Kevin, you know perfectly well that lots of airports in Europe have introduced e-gates already.
Yeah.
It's actually the responsibility of the member states, not of the EU.
But it's going to formalise it.
Ursula von der Leyen did not have the authority to give the e-gate, so that's bogus.
But it's not. It's going to formalise it. It's going to lead to it being easier to travel, which they will, of course.
Only if the member states want to do it, which they can do anyway.
But they're going to do it.
This agreement. Lloyd, it's becoming a rule taker. And what we voted for was independence from the EU. We are now going to take our food standard rules from the EU. That seems to me so fundamentally foolish.
Well, at the moment we have a huge problem that you guys did completely mess it up. I mean, even earlier on we were saying that the last government missed many, many opportunities in negotiations, didn't listen to your advice, didn't listen to your advice, and they hashed the job. So now we're having to pick up the pieces of something that everyone agrees was completely useless, hashed together, didn't really have all the opportunities. And what we're having to think about is the changed world we live in. So we have Ukraine, and we know that there's a faltering US on the other side of that transatlantic agreement. We need to bolster ourselves here in Europe. We need to share information about who those criminals are operating across Europe, something that we will now be able to start to do under this agreement with more regularity. We need to make sure that our fishermen, who export 70% of their fish to Europe, because actually a lot of the fish that is farmed in Britain, shellfish, for example, is not particularly to the British taste, but it's very popular in Spain and in France, and they're exported there. And at the moment, fisheries under the previous government declined. They declined because we weren't able to export. This will be a... I know that they're fearful because, of course, they have been treated so badly over the last 10, 15 years.
But our fishermen aren't allowed to catch the fish that people want to buy here because they've all gone to the Europeans. That's why.
No, that's just not true. A lot of the fish that people want here are fished in different markets.
People want cod with their chips, and a load of the cod goes to the Europeans.
Our cod and our sole is caught by foreign fishermen, and it's our cod and it's our sole. We've got one viewer who says this is a soft version of rejoining the EU, and that's right, isn't it? We've become a rule taker, and the European Court will determine what the EU rules mean.
Well, as you well know, the European Court already has overview in Northern Ireland, and the British government and your government as well had a view that we would not...
Well, I voted against that.
Yes, but you might have voted against it, but you were part of it, weren't you?
You voted against it as well, yeah.
So the British government already has a policy that we will not deviate from those rules. So there will be no material change in terms of the sausages that people eat, but instead our sausage makers will be able to sell the British sausage to the French.
British sausage, that's like...
I deliberately said it like that, yes.
John, Andy sends in a message saying, please explain the emissions trading scheme and why you think it's such a bad idea. You're pretty expert on this. Why is the emissions trading scheme going to have such a bad effect on the UK?
Well, what the emissions trading scheme does is it increases the cost of us supplying energy when our industrial products have got to compete with Chinese and Americans that don't have all this extra tax imposed upon them. So it's what you were saying in your excellent opening, that we are deindustrialising at pace. We're destroying all those jobs so that we import it from places that generate even more CO2.
The Europeans were introducing the carbon border adjustments. And that meant if we were not in line on those areas, we would have a huge tax. This is getting rid of that danger.
That's not quite right, is it? That's not quite right, because the carbon border adjustment mechanism is exactly that. It's an adjustment mechanism. Yeah. And if you've been decarbonising your economy, which we have faster than most EU countries, that wouldn't have hit us. What it does is it means we now have to put a tax on goods coming into this country. Yeah. So we've closed down our industry.
Not on goods coming from the European Union.
No, but coming from elsewhere.
No.
So we've now shut down our...
The European Union will be able to freely
but
trade.
not from China, not from America, not from India. So we're going to make consumers worse off to protect EU industries because we've already closed ours.
It's fascinating because when Trump talks about actually making sure that we build up domestic and neighbours' businesses and put taxes on China, you're flag waving and cheering along with it sometimes. No. And then at other moments...
No, I'm in favour of free trade.
Well, OK, I think that there is a consensus out there that people think that China has been being very bad with subsidising their fuels, subsidising their steel, and this will mean that we have a united front with Europe, so they cannot play one party
I don't want a united front with Europe because it just makes
a united
goods...
front against China that is deliberately undermining British jobs, because I want to save British jobs. Do you not want to?
The British jobs have already gone. We're now going to be subsidising German jobs. I don't want to...
Or are being destroyed by emissions trading and super dear energy.
And the tax comes back to Britain. The tax will come back to the UK, not to Europe. Yeah. That is part of the agreement. That is a clear part of the agreement and very positive.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. Higher tax is never positive. But Kevin, what Dean has said, will all the UK global trade deals made since Brexit now have to be renegotiated to align with their protectionist single market? And that must be a risk, that we take out some of the advantages. And Labour was very proud of the deal it got with India, That's going to be harder with a CBAM on Indian goods.
I'm not sure that anything that is moving forward on today's agreement is going to go against a deal with India. But the fact is, what is the big picture for the viewers and listeners? The government said, we're not going to go back on Brexit. We hear you.
But they have.
But the government says we're not going to go back. They haven't.
They've just
Freedom
lied.
of movement, sovereignty is also there. But on these measures today, British goods are going to be sold more easily from... you look at what Scottish salmon are saying across Europe, OK? We're going to be able to get more access to European markets from British defence companies. And ultimately, it is the gradual, not fast enough for the SNP or the Lib Dems, it's a gradual listening to the middle ground of this country, which wants to reset our relationship with Europe, Jacob. I don't know why you're so
Kevin,
vexed about it.
You would expect the government to put as positive a spin as possible on this.
Tell the truth, that's what
they
they're doing.
Have said, well, they haven't told the truth because they've said they're not reneging on Brexit or sovereignty, and taking the law from the European Court of Justice is clearly reneging on sovereignty. But the government inevitably and fairly will have put its best spin on it. It says this is worth £9 billion by 2040. This is a pitiful amount in return for probably paying, if it cost us as much as it cost the Swiss, £1 billion a year into the EU coffers.
I don't know about a comparison with the Swiss. What I know is about what the vast majority of British business are saying today, the community that I'm a part of, and they are welcoming what the government is doing. And if you listen to British business in recent years, with all due respect to you two very senior Conservatives, they were not saying that. They thought that we were just a mess in how we were doing things with Europe. I'm not saying it's perfect today. It's a cautious step in the right direction.
Well, the fishing businesses and the energy businesses certainly aren't in favour of all this. And we have given things away, and then you read the text. None of the gains you're talking about are nailed down or specific. And when we see the actual legal text, we'll probably find that we're going to be ripped off even more.
Well, thank you very much to Kevin and to my panel after a day of unconditional surrender to the European Union. Shortly, I'll be speaking to the man who was there when it all started, former Brexit Secretary Sir David Davis, and he'll be giving his verdict shortly.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast. Hello. Well, looking further afield, there are heavy showers around with the risk of thunderstorms, but mixed with plenty of warm, sunny spells. So across Madeira, the Canary Islands, fine and dry on Tuesday. Likewise for much of Spain and Portugal. But we do have this area of low pressure bringing heavy spells of showers and thunderstorms across parts of Europe. Plenty of sunshine further towards the east and feeling warm here too. Otherwise, sunshine and showers, highs of 26. All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, it seems almost a lifetime ago when 17 million people voted in the largest democratic exercise in British history to leave the European Union. And it was my next guest who became the first Brexit secretary and negotiated the original effort to leave. It is the one and only Sir David Davis. And I've had the best question for you in a mail Mogg from Alice. And it says, please ask Sir David, if it had been him who negotiated the final Brexit deal, we wouldn't have been in this mess in the first place. Is that right? And that if you'd stayed on a bit longer, it would have been better?
Obviously, well, I'm not sure about that. Obviously, I resigned because I thought we weren't getting the best Brexit deal possible. And there were sort of 3 things that would have been different. Number one, when we gave them £40 billion, I would have said, only if we get a proper deal, right? Number one. Number two, we should have done what the Europeans always do. Nothing's agreed till everything's agreed. Instead, number 10, let Europe have what it wanted first, and then we had to go for our second. That's bad. And the third thing was this ridiculous thing which comes up today, dynamic alignment. And I remember vividly, I think it's December the 3rd of the relevant year, when Theresa May rang me and said, well, we've agreed with the Irish to have full alignment between the North and South. And you will remember, when you were in the House, what agony that created the whole country. Those 3 things wouldn't have been there. And I think that would have made it easier. Now, that being said, you know, given where he started, I think David Frost did a good job. I think David Frost was a good negotiator. And actually, you know, he was the one who called them out. When he actually said, well, if you're going to do this, it's no deal, they backed down. And he demonstrated what I've always believed. You have to be tough with the Europeans to get a reasonable deal. But then you will.
And when you started, there was no majority in Parliament. It was very difficult circumstances. But the EU knew very clearly what it wanted. It basically wanted to keep the UK as tied in as closely as possible. And it was for us to try and extract ourselves. Today's deal seems to be Labour saying, actually, we quite like being tied in.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, it's a Remainers deal. It's a Remainers view of Brexit. I mean, and so you've got the problems you've got. I mean, again, as I said, that word dynamic alignment comes up. For your viewers who are not sort of aficionados of this, dynamic alignment means every time they change the law, we have to follow. Now, we do deals with all sorts of people around the world to sell them our beef or our corn or, you know, our engines or our cars. We don't, we say, right, they're going to be sold on this standard, this level of safety, say. We don't say every time you change your law, we're going to change our law. This is the only organisation in the world where we do a deal like this. And Starmer thinks it's a good thing.
And under the WTO, using non-tariff barriers is not actually allowed.
No.
So it's in breach of the WTO to use these health and safety standards as an excuse for reducing competition. But with Europe, we go along with it and we don't complain.
Well, that's right. And it's been, I mean, essentially, it's been the major part of Europe's protectionist policy, let's call it what it is protectionist policy since 95, when the World Trade Organization cut tariffs dramatically around the world. Fantastic change in world trade. 1.5 billion people lifted out of poverty. And what the Europeans do? They start to work against it.
So how much of today do you blame really on us and on Theresa May? You resigned over the Chequers deal, which essentially left us bound in. Yeah. You've been in charge for a couple of years before then. Do you feel that's where the problem really came from? That once Chequers had come up, even though David Frost did a good job, the Brexit deal we got wasn't as good of it as it should have been, leaving the way for this deal to come forward?
Look, Chequers limited what we could do. It limited the best, as it were. It took away the very best, and we were with a lesser thing. But Brexit was first and foremost about democracy. It's about making our own decisions about our own future. And we've got that. I mean, we're giving away some of it today, but we've principally got that. It was our own place in the world, the ability to deal with the Americans ourselves. I mean, no matter how bad Starmer is, the deal he's going to get with the States is going to be better than the deal that the Europeans are going to get with the States. I mean, you mentioned earlier, you were talking about AI, for example. Those sorts of things we can do now. So there's a lot there. It's not as good as it should be, but there's a lot there.
But can we still do AI? Because through the Windsor Framework, the EU is arguing that AI has an effect on its single market, and therefore suddenly AI is coming into the orbit of the EU's regulatory sphere. And it seems to me that that's the sort of trick they will pull with dynamic alignment, that if you're using AI and it has any consequence for anything you're selling to the EU, you agree to dynamic alignment, therefore AI is now out and you've got to follow our rules on it.
And they'll do that at every turn. And that is what we expect from the Europeans, or at least if you read your history, you expect from. Bear in mind, before us, all the deals the European Union did were essentially with supplicant states. I mean, states that were, I don't know, Morocco or some ex-colonies of some of the European countries who wanted to get access and so on. And so it was a sort of boss to junior sort of relationship. We were the first ones the other way. And I'm afraid we have been naive over things like dynamic alignment. I mean, you were mentioning earlier the energy arrangements, the veterinary arrangements. All of these now bring us back under the European Court of Justice. That is a really, really serious concession.
Well, it seems to me the biggest beneficiary of today is Ed Miliband, because this now encrusts his really aggressive net zero policy into UK law via the EU, via the ECJ, and it will be much harder to break out at exactly the point many voters are realising that the green agenda is wrong and is making them cold and poor, and the US has abandoned it and has pulled out of Paris, and that this is trying to encase us in something that is failing.
Not only is it that, I mean, it's at the time when I think even Keir Starmer is now recognising the green policies we pursued actually don't even deliver a green outcome. Because if what you're doing, well, Scunthorpe demonstrated, that's what taught him. If what you're doing is reducing your carbon footprint by driving your own businesses abroad so that it's China that makes the steel at more carbon per tonne, or China that makes the cars at more carbon per tonne, we're actually increasing the global footprint, if not our own footprint. So yes, I mean, two things are happening. One, you're right, Miliband's preferred future is we're being tied into it. And secondly, it's taking away from Starmer the opportunity to act on his own realisation.
So the one good thing that perhaps comes out of it is a closer relationship between the UK and Europe when it's a time of international tension, and you saw how friendly Starmer was with Ursula von der Leyen, and personal relationships matter?
No. I'm afraid. I mean, the truth is they don't. I mean, look, it's better to be friendly than not friendly. There's no two ways about that. I've long been an arguer that we should be close to Europe without being run by Europe. But the simple truth is that most of the things that were promised to us in this were not really promises. They were forms of words. I mean, even take the e-gates, which some people will care about, right? I think you pointed out that the e-gates are actually national decisions. What the European Union says, well, there'll be no legal block. In other words, they won't intervene to make it worse. And when I've been to Europe the last couple of years, I've gone through the e-gates. So I don't know quite it's a bogus thing. And time again, you have to realise that the machinery of Brussels is designed to behave in this way. The individuals can be as charming as you like. If the machinery says, you're going to have this deal and we're going to do what we like with it.
So, David, thank you very much. I think we should rename Starmer Surrender, Secure Surrender. Anyway, changing tack a little, the Oxford Guide to English Usage says of the semicolon that it, quote, separates those parts of a sentence between which there is a more distinct break than would call for a comma, but which are too closely connected to be made in separate sentences. Typically, these will be clauses of similar importance and grammatical construction, e.g., to err is human, to forgive divine. Sadly, not enough people read the Oxford Guide to English Usage, and the semicolon may be dying. So is it time to go to work on the semicolon? It's the healthy choice. Anyway, now it's not Patrick Christie's, it's the one and only Ben Leo. Ben, other than the Somerset weather, what are you reporting this evening?
Thank you, Jacob. Yes, only this Labour government, who is in touch with North London Remainers, could think e-gates were a worthy swap for our entire fishing industry. What a disgrace. See you in a sec.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tomorrow, we'll see a mix of sunshine and showers, though the odd shower could be heavy, perhaps even bringing the odd rumble of thunder, but feeling a little warmer into the afternoon compared to today. And taking a look at the bigger picture, we've got high pressure situated to the north of the country, though at times this drags in a northeasterly flow of air, so that brings in more cloud, more moisture drifting in from the North Sea, so it could lead to a murky start across eastern parts of England, though it should be largely dry. The odd shower still possible across northern parts of England, central parts of England and Wales, but many towns and cities holding up in the mid to high single figures. So to start the day across Scotland, once again largely dry, fairly bright, particularly across the west. There's still that lingering low cloud across some eastern counties, a bit of a breeze across the northeast too, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England. Largely dry, though still that low cloud bringing quite a murky feel to the start of the day across eastern parts of England. But across the rest of England and Wales, fairly similar, largely dry and bright, and a fairly mild start to the day, warming up nicely too, particularly as we head into the afternoon, and remaining dry though, any cloud pushing back towards eastern counties where it may linger for much of the day. And as we head into the afternoon, there is a risk of showers, particularly across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern parts of England. The odd shower turning heavy, possibly even thundery later into the afternoon, but largely dry for most, plenty of sunshine to go around and feeling warm, highs of around 23 degrees Celsius. Very different day on offer across central and southern parts as we head into Wednesday. More cloud, outbreaks of rain and also showers. Once again, this could turn heavy at times. But for Northern Ireland, Scotland, northern parts of England, largely dry and bright after a chilly start, and remaining dry to end the week before a return of the rain and showers as we head towards the bank holiday weekend and temperatures on the downturn.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you. Driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It has plenty of room for your family of four. Comes complete with kitchen, bathroom, and all the space you'll need for life on the road. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. This is Patrick Christie's Tonight with me, Ben Leo. Do you remember this?
Can now say the decision taken in 1975 by this country to join the common market has been reversed by this referendum to leave the EU. We are absolutely clear now that there is no way that the Remain side can win.